folks. My name is Matt Peterson. I'm a trainer at Pragmatic where we do on-demand learning, private training, hackathons. We have this YouTube channel as well, so feel free to like if you like the video and subscribe for all future video updates. And in this series I've been doing for the year of 2022 is all around the Power Platform. So I've done some videos on Power Apps, I've done some videos on Power BI, and I'm now back to revisiting Power Apps. So we've built throughout 3 videos an application, and so if you want to get back to where I'm at, feel free to go watch episode 1 and start building it with me. But if you are just here to know about how to use forms within a Canvas application, then feel free to sit back, watch, and hopefully you can learn a few things here. So let's talk about what we're going to do today. So what I have is our app that I've created, which is all about creating inspections and viewing park inspections for different parks around Clay County. Now, the next thing I want to do, because we've talked about how we can view data, and one thing I did from my last video to today, just so if you're like, hey, I don't have my gallery looking like yours at the bottom, I added in here on this gallery, if I come on over into my items property, I added in a sort command. So I'm filtering my gallery based on the records I select in this gallery, and then I'm sorting them based on the inspection date and in descending value. And then I also changed the layout of my gallery to where it's called title, subtitle, and body. And I have the inspection date. So this item.inspection date, I hard-coded inspection date in front. I've got the inspector, and I also have the rating. So that's what I did a little bit behind the scenes before this next video. But now let's talk about what I want to do. I want to put a form to create records. So how do we get that accomplished? Well, we head on up into our insert ribbon. And once we are up here in the insert ribbon, we're going to hit forms and we're going to choose an edit form. Edit forms are used for editing records and creating records. I'll have another video about what display forms can do later on throughout the series. So I'm going to choose an edit form. And the minute I choose an edit form, it puts it over here. I'm going to resize this. I'm going to come over here, put it up about right here. Now the first thing I need to do is connect to data to say where do I want these records to be created. So I can hit the connect to data button, or over in the properties pane with the form selected, I can just go to the data source drop down and choose it as well. And so what I'm going to do is go with my inspection table. Now once the table is here, I now need to add the fields that I want into the form. So if I come over and I click on edit fields and then I hit add field, this will give me all the fields that I can put into my form. Now I don't have to put everything in here, but if you have required columns within your data source, they definitely need to be included in this form in order for your record to be created. So what I'm going to put in here for today is I'm going to put in comments, the inspection date, who the inspector was. I'm going to put in the rating as well. And let's see, is there anything else? Yes, and I need the park ID because in this table, the park ID needs to be logged so we know who the record is attached to. So I'm going to choose park ID, rating, inspector, inspection date, and comments. And once I have all of those fields in, I'm then simply going to hit add. Now once I have these added in, I'm going to collapse all of these fields that I've put in. And one thing we can do is change the layout of our form. So over here on the right hand side, you can change how many columns do you want the form to display, what layout do you want it, vertical or horizontal. I'm going to keep it just 3 columns today in a layout of vertical. But one of the other things I can now do is change what fields they see first. So if I want them to see the inspector first, I can move the inspector to the top. And now we see the inspector. And then if I want the comments to be the last thing they see, I can move it to the bottom. So you can easily move things around however you need them to be fit in. The other thing to know is what if you put in a field that you really didn't mean to? Well, if you hit the ellipses, you can hit remove, and then it removes the field. But the next thing I want to talk about is the different control types that we have available to us. Based on your data type of the field you're bringing in, there are different ways to display that within the form. For example, let's take a look at comments, which is a text data type. So when I expand out comments, currently it's just edit text as the control type. However, if I hit the drop down, we will see that we have a lot more different types of ways to show this in the form. So anything with an edit means they can interact with it, they can change things around. Anything with the view in front means they're only going to view the data for that individual record. Well, because this is all about creating records, I'm going to stay away from the view parts. But I'm going to change this to an edit multi-line. I want them to have a little bit more space here in the comments section. So I change it to edit multi-line, you can see that the box has now gotten bigger. So that's one thing we can do. Another thing that's typically done is on number fields. So my rating is currently a number data type. And right now it's at edit number, which means, hey, put in a number that you want to place in. But what if you want to control what numbers they're allowed to use? Well, if I hit the drop down, I have a few different ways. I can do an allowed values, so I give them the values that they're allowed to pick from in a drop down list. Or I can make it more graphical and choose an edit rating where they have the stars that they pick from. Now for today, I'm only going to say you're only allowed to give us a 1 to a 5 rating. However, if I can change that number of stars. By default, the stars are set to 5, but we can change that to a max of 10 stars if you want to. But you can kind of get the idea. If you have a lot of numbers, like a 1 to 100 scale, rating's not going to be the best way to approach it. You would probably go with an edit slider, so you can slide that value over very quickly. But for today, we're going to go with an edit rating. And so once I've made those two changes, if we come on up and look, we now see that we have ratings up here that they're going to be able to change and pick how many stars they want to go with. Now that's one thing. Those are a few different control types that I changed on the fly there. The next thing I'm going to do before we make any more modifications, I'm going to go to my home ribbon, and I'm just going to change the fill color to a white so that this pops out a little bit more on the screen itself. Now, every data field we put in has what's called, now it's called a data card on the form. So if I come on over here to form and I expand this out, you can see my 5 fields that I put in, and they all have what are called data cards associated with them. Now what can we do with these data cards? Well, each data card has some properties located within it. So let's say, for example, on my inspector, I'm capturing the email address of the record creator. I don't want them to have to type it in because they could either type in the wrong email address by accident, or this would also allow them to create records for other people. So I want to lock this down and say, hey, whoever's using my application, you are the inspector. So here's how we can get that accomplished. What we'll do here is I will select the inspector data card. And with the data card selected, notice these are the 4 different things I can change. Now, in order to change any of these properties, I first have to unlock the data card because it's currently in the locked form. So in order to unlock data cards, you have 3 different ways of getting this done. Option number 1, right-click on the data card and hit unlock. Option number 2, go to the tree view, hit the ellipses of that data card and hit unlock. Or option number 3 is with the data card selected. So let me get the whole data card selected here. If I go to the advanced section, I can unlock it here as well. So I'm just going to unlock it from here for right now. And now that it's unlocked, I can start to change things about this. So what I want to change for this data card is simply the value that is shown in the form. I don't want it to be blank. I want it to be the user's email address. So how we're going to get this accomplished is I'm going to select the white area of the inspector, which is the data card value. But if for some reason it's not clicking really well for you, you can just select data card value underneath your data card over in the tree view. And with it selected now, in the default property, I'm going to put in a Power Apps FX language formula. And I'm going to go with user. And the user function is simple, open parentheses, close parentheses. And so we can see that this returns a data type of a record, but what do we want from the user? So anytime you have a record being returned, to get those extra things you want, hit the period, and now I can say, oh, that's it. I want the email address. And right away, as I say right away, there it goes, mpeterson@pragmaticworks.com. Sweet, we've got our first one done. Now you might be thinking, okay, Matt, that's great. Their email address is there, but that's not going to stop anyone from wiping it out and putting in their own email address. Well, I've got the fix for you. Few different fixes to this. I'm going to show you one of them right now, and I'll do another one on another data card. With this value selected, I'm going to come up to the property drop down, and I'm going to go to display mode. And we have 3 different display modes. Currently, it's in display mode.edit, which means we can change the values around. However, what I can do is change this around, and I'll zoom in here. I'm going to change this to display mode.disabled. Now with .disabled, notice how it is grayed out. And my end users now will see it, but they're not going to be able to change it or manipulate it. So that is one way to lock it down. Another way is instead of .disabled, I could go with .view. .view, they still can't change it, but it's not grayed out. So typically what I like to do, it's just me, if I don't want them to change it, but I want them to see it, I like to do dot disabled, because sometimes I've done dot view in the past and I'll have someone say, hey Matt, I got your app, I'm using it, it's not letting me change a value. And it looks like they should be able to because it's still in white there. So again, it's really all about your design. So I'm going to change this to dot disabled. So now that we have that done, what are some other things we can do within forms? Well, what about the inspection date? Let's say I want it to default to today's date, make it easier so they don't have to hit this, calendar picker over here. So I'm going to come to inspection date. I'm going to right click. I'm going to unlock it. I'm going to go into that date value. And so for the default date, which is currently parent.default, let's put in another formula here. And I'm going to use the formula called today. Today will return today's date, and it does return a timestamp of midnight. So if you're like, Matt, I've got a form that I need the date and the time. Well, instead of today, what you would use is the function called now. Now returns today's date as well as the current time. But for today, haha, see what I did there? All I need is today. And again, at this point, I can make it display mode .view .disabled, but I'm going to keep it just regular here. I'm going to allow them to change the date. I'm going to allow them to backdate some of the records if they need to. Now, the last one I'm going to do here is my park ID. This is critical. Now, also, before I do that, notice inspection date up here, it's bringing back the name of the column in our SQL Server table because it's SQL Server database here. We do not have any, we're not allowed any spaces with our column names. However, what if you want them to be able to see a space there? Make it a little bit more easy on the eyes. Well, what I can do is select inspection date right here. So I've selected the data card key. This is referred to as the key. The column name is called the key within your data cards. And for the text, I'm going to get rid of parent.displayName. And what this means, parent.displayName, it says use the original source's display name. Use that original formatting or that original default property. And so I'm going to get rid of this and just hard code in inspection date with a nice little space there. And you can see that it's now changed on the form itself. So different little tweaks and things you can do to these different controls on your form. But now let's head on over to the park ID. Now the park ID is mission critical. If I don't have a park ID, record's not created, just like the date and the inspector. They need to be there in order to create a record. But park ID is even more special. I don't believe my people should have the park IDs memorized. I don't want them to put in the wrong park ID for the wrong inspection. So the way that I'm thinking about this here is when they have a record selected in the gallery, I want them to create the inspection. So I want Thunderbolt Park's park ID to be in the park ID when they're ready to create that record. So here's how we're going to get this one accomplished to populate our park ID. So the first thing we're going to do, right click, we're going to unlock it. Then I'm going to go into the value itself. And for the default property, I'm going to wipe this out. And now I have to think it through. They're going to select a park in the gallery before they create the record. So let's use the selection in the gallery to bring back that park ID because in my park table, I have park IDs there. So up here at the top, I'm going to say, go look at gallery 1. This is gallery 1. I know I'm on the right gallery because I've got those green boxes around it. Dot, look at who I have selected. And then dot, what do I want returned from my selection? I want the park ID. Now with the park ID here, boom, park ID 1 is now being determined in here. And if I select different parks throughout, park ID 2, I'll select Black Creek, park ID 5, and things are working picture perfect. So those are just a few little modifications that I'm going to make to this form. Once you have your modifications on the form, the next thing is, well, how do I submit the data? Well, we're not going to do that first. The first thing I want to do is talk about the form itself. So the form itself, the default mode is currently set into edit, which means when I'm ready to play my app and create a new record, it's in default mode of edit. So it's going to think that this form is ready to edit a record. So watch this. If I hit play, it says no item to display because it says, hey, I'm in edit mode. What record are you trying to edit? Well, I'm not trying to edit a record. What I'm trying to do is create a new record. So what I'm going to do is change the default mode of this form. So I have the form selected and I'm going to come over to the properties pane and change the default mode to new. Now that it is set in new mode, Now I'm ready to do the next part of the puzzle here. So if I hit play, okay, things are looking good. So there's two things I need here. One, I want a button that says, hey, I was creating a record, I had the wrong park selected, or I realize I don't need to create the record. I simply want to cancel record creation. So in order to get this accomplished, I could put in an icon to do this, but I'm going to make it very obvious in the video. I'm going to put in a button that says cancel record. So I'm going to come up to my insert ribbon. I'm going to choose a button. I'm going to bring it on down over here, and it can be anywhere. It does not have to be located in the form. I'm just putting it there so that they're all kind of close together. And the first thing I'm going to do with this button is I'm going to double click on it, and I'm going to say cancel. And then I'll probably change the color of this button as well, maybe to more of like a red color, so that, you know, canceling red pretty much goes together. So now that I have the button, we got to put some action on the button. Buttons come with no action by default. So with the button selected, I'm going to come up here and say, all right, instead of false, when we select the button, what do I want to happen? Well, I want whatever I was putting into the form, I want to wipe it out. I don't want any of those old entries there when I'm ready to create my next new record. So the function we use here is called reset form. And then we just have to name the form that we're using, which in my case is called form 2. So reset form, form 2. Great. But what's the next thing I need it to do? I also need it, because I'm going to do something in a little bit, I want this form to get back into new mode. I don't want it to be in kind of limbo of not knowing what to do. Especially if when we get into editing records later on, I want this button to go, oh, I don't want to actually edit the record, let me cancel it. So I need to put the form back into new mode. So I'm going to do a semicolon here. And to put forms back into new mode, it's called new form. And then the name of the form, which in this case is called form 2. And that right there is all I need on this cancel button. So watch how this works. I'm going to hit play. I'll choose Thunderbolt Park here. And Thunderbolt Park. And I'm going to put in some comments. And then I'll put in a rating of 5. But then I'll hit cancel. And boom, it's gone. My comments are gone. It went back to the default rating. So nothing was created and I'm still into new mode. So pretty neat how we have that going on. Cancel button is working. Now the next thing I need to do is be able to create a brand new record. So I need to have that button to submit the data back to the source. So I'm going to come back up here, insert another button, bring it on over. I'll zoom in here. I'm going to do something like submit. Actually, I'll call it save. And then I'm going to change the color. We'll go something like with a green color here. Oh, that's not good. We'll go save there. That looks pretty good. So we have a cancel button and a save button. So now what do I need to do to get the save button to work? Well, I need to put some formulas on it, right? So with my save button selected on the on select, look how easy this formula is. It is called submit form. And then it is submit form, form 2. That is it. That's technically what we need to get the form submitted. But we're not really done. Because after we submit the form again is kind of in this limbo phase. And we have to say, all right, I need you to go back into new form because I might be ready to create another record. Now I could put this next line of code all on the on select, but I'm going to give you best practice here. I only want this to go into new form if the form was successfully submitted. So here's what we've got. On the form itself, we have a beautiful property in the property dropdown called on success, which means it's monitoring the form for successful submissions. And if the form successfully submits, then whatever I put here, the lines of codes will get run. So what do I want to happen? Well, I want two things to happen. One is required. The first thing I want to happen is I want my form to go back into new mode. So I'm going to go new form and then form 2. Perfect. That will put it back into new mode. But the second thing I want to happen is I want my user to know, hey, your record was created, because maybe on your application, you're not going to have the records underneath of it so that they can see their record was created. So in order to do this, we're going to put in a function called notify. What notify will do is show a little pop-up message for them saying whatever you want it to. So I'm going to go with the function called notify. And then I'm going to hard code in here, your record was created. And then that's pretty much it. We could add more dynamic content here, but to make the video a little bit shorter, I'm going to keep it like this. I'll add some of those extra nuggets of information in future videos. But your record was created, comma. Now I choose what notification type. If I choose error, it's going to show in a red banner. If I choose information, it shows in a gray. And if I choose success, it's going to be in a green banner. Well, this is a good thing, so I'm going to go with success. Now, when they get this banner, to get rid of it, they're going to have to hit a little X in the banner itself. However, if I just want the banner to disappear after a few seconds, I can code that here if I want to. This is an optional parameter, but I'm going to put it in today. So I'm going to go comma, and then I'm going to put in the timeout. And this is in terms of milliseconds. So I'm going to do it after 2 seconds. So 2000 here. So now, everything should be good to go. Let's see if we can get some records created. So I'm going to hit play. And I'm going to go up here to Ronnie Van Zant Park. And currently we see that we already have an inspection here, but I'm going to put in a new one. I'll put in a 5-star rating and say, loved my time at the park. I'm going to hit save. And boom, your record was created. And it should disappear here in a few seconds. There it goes. Oh, it did not disappear. I need to check that out, but I can hit the X now. And we can see that the rating here is a 5, and that is my brand new record. So let me go over here and take a look at that notification on success 2000. So for some reason, it just didn't disappear after 2000, after my 2 seconds there, but hopefully my next record I create, it will. But also notice what it did. After I submitted, it went back into new mode and it was ready for me to create a brand new record. So, hey, we've done it. We've able to create a record. We've able to then see how we can cancel a record creation. So the last thing I want to show you is how you can edit a record. We're going to use the same form, but what we need to do, since the default mode of the form is new, always wanting new records, I need to force it to go into edit mode. So here's how I'm going to get that accomplished. I'm going to go to the records that I want to do editing over, which are over here in my gallery, and I'm going to change this icon, which currently is that right chevron icon. I'm going to make it a little bit more explicit. I'm just going to choose the edit icon, but it can be any icon of your choosing or image or button as well. And with the icon now here, for the onSelect property, the whole goal of what this button needs to do is it needs to put my form into edit mode. Well, there's a function for it, right? We have new form, we have submit form, we have reset form, and we also have edit form. And so I want to edit form 2. That is it. So if I hit play, I want to come in and edit my old record here. I hit edit. Oh, no item to display. So good news is it put the form into edit mode. Bad news is it says, hey, I'm in edit mode. I don't know what record you want me to edit. So this is when we have to take advantage of one other property on this form that we have not done yet. So I'm on my form now over in the tree view. And this property, we only use this property when we're trying to edit a record or we're trying to display a record. For just new forms, you never have to touch this property. But when you're, apologies, when you're trying to edit or display a record, you go to the item property. And so the item property says, hey, when you're ready to edit or to display, what record are you trying to do this over? So I have to think again, okay. These records are in this gallery at the bottom. So I have an icon attached to each record. I got it. Let's tell it to look at my gallery 2. So I see the green, so I've got the right gallery selected. Dot, look at who I have selected in the gallery. And that's it. Gallery 2 dot selected. And look, love my time at the park. It is automatically here for me. So now if I hit play, and I change this to a 1-star rating, and I hit save, notice my rating has now changed to 1. Pretty cool. Now, technically that's all you need for edit. I'm going to show you one last thing here because some people are probably already asking. They said, Matt, I think I'm going to have a problem with this because let's take a look at this record here. The inspection date is for March 11th. The inspector is somebody that starts with an R. Let's see what happens when I hit edit. When I hit edit, notice what's going to happen if I save this record. It's going to put in a new inspection date and it's going to put me as the inspector. So what if that's not what you want to do? What if when someone edits a record, there are certain values you want to lock down? You might be saying, Matt, why did those values change and the other ones were what the inspector had originally created? It's all because on these two data cards, we put some default behavior. We put the today function on inspection date. We put user.email for inspector. So it's using those default values. So now we have a problem, right? Do we want the default value or do we want the original value? Well, since we have two different scenarios here, this is where I'm going to bring in some if conditional logic. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to head back up to inspector. And so going to go to the inspector and I'm going to go to the default value, which is currently set to user.email. What I need Power Apps to do is check first what mode the form is in. If my form mode is new, I'm ready for a new record, I want to use user.email. However, if it's in edit mode, I want to use the original value. I don't want that to change. So here's how we're going to get this accomplished. I'm going to backspace this out for my default, and we're going to start off with an if check. So we're going to do an if check here, a logical test. And what I want to do is check the form's mode. So I'm going to say form2 dot, what do I want to know about form2? I want to know what mode it's currently in. And so I want to see if the mode of form2 is equal to form mode dot new. If form2 is in new mode, if this results in true, comma, then let me put in what the true value should be. So for a new mode, what do we want? I want the user dot email. Cool. Comma, if it's not in new mode, what do I want? Well, I want the original inspector's email address. I want this record's original. So I go with this item, because if we're in edit mode, it has an item, it has a record that it's looking at. So this item dot inspector. Let me spell it correct. There it is. And then I'll close that off. So if we're in a new mode, do the true value, user.email. If we're not in new mode, do the false value, which is this item.inspector. And notice right away, it's already changed it back over to the original person. So if I come over here, let me find a different one. He's got all a bunch of R's, so I'll go to this inspector with the W. If I hit edit, boom, W, perfect. If I hit cancel here, we're back into new mode, and boom, look, my email address is there now. So no matter which park I'm going to select, my email address is there. But if I go to edit, boom, it's not. And I would do the same thing for inspection date or any field. We would say if the form is in new mode, here's the default value. Comma, if it's not, use this items dot whatever field you are referencing. So these are some of your very first basics to know about forms when using them in Canvas apps. I'm going to have a lot more with the advanced part of forms coming later in this series. But if you're new to Power Apps, this is definitely something you're going to want to know. And you've got the basic functionality to hit the ground running. And like I always say, we've got this. I hope you enjoyed the video. Like, subscribe. Let us know if there's anything we can do to help you out with your business and organizations and finding solutions for you. And hopefully I will be seeing you in episode number 7.